My name is Clara, and I'm 52 years old. I've worked as a janitor at the Grand Halston Hotel for almost 7 years. The floors here gleam more than my future ever did. Every morning, I slip on my worn out sneakers and push my cart past luxury I can't afford to dream of. That morning started no different until a storm of tension swept through the lobby. Security guards rushed to the glass doors, murmuring into their earpieces. Guests paused mid-sip of their espresso. Then he walked in, tall, stern, wrapped in $1,000 coat and the kind of silence that makes people nervous. The manager whispered, "That's Alexander Rourke, the investor from abroad, worth over 300 million." He looked around, confused, not angry yet, but something was off. Then came the realization. No one spoke his language, not the manager, not the assistants, not the concierge. They fumbled with translation apps. One receptionist even tried pantomiming like a bad game of charades. Mr. Rourke's face grew red, his gestures sharp. I could see it. He wasn't just irritated. He was panicking. That's when something tugged at me, a memory. My mother's voice, years ago, teaching me her native tongue while scrubbing dishes in our kitchen. I stepped forward, heart pounding. "I can translate," I said softly. They all turned. Some snickered. The manager scoffed, "Clara, this isn't the time." But Mr. Rourke's eyes locked on mine, desperate, searching. And then I spoke, in his language, clearly, gently. His expression changed in a heartbeat, from panic to hope. The language poured out of me smoother than I expected. Words I hadn't spoken in decades found their place, as if waiting for this very moment. Mr. Rourke blinked hard, then answered in a soft, rapid voice only I could understand. He spoke of a missing briefcase, one containing vital contracts for a deal with the National Bank. His flight had landed late. His assistant hadn't shown. He was minutes from losing millions. The lobby fell silent as I translated every word. He looked human. No longer the marble statue of a billionaire. Just a man who needed help. From that moment, everything shifted. He motioned for me to walk with him, past the confused staff, through velvet halls lined with gold-trimmed mirrors. My cleaning cart was left behind, abandoned like yesterday's worries. He asked my name. "Clara," I said. He repeated it softly. "Clara, you saved me." We reached the hotel's private suite level, where only the elite dared tread. I'd never even been allowed past the elevators before. "Sit," he said gently, pointing to a leather armchair. "Please." I hesitated, but sat. He poured us both a glass of water with trembling hands. Told me about his last-minute decision to come here, about how the banks were waiting on his signature to release funds tied to a multi-million-dollar investment. I translated every message, every phone call, every legal clause. My brain ran faster than my nerves, but something else happened. With every sentence, he leaned in more, trusted more, asked not just about translation, but about me, my life, my story, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel invisible. I felt seen. By noon, I was in his car, an elegant, silent machine that smelled of leather and power, heading downtown. He needed to present himself at a financial firm where contracts would be reviewed. Without a translator, the deal was dead. Without me. As we crossed the city, he asked, "Do you believe in luck, Clara?" I hesitated. "I believe in purpose." He smiled faintly, then looked away. The bank's office tower rose like a monument to ambition. Inside, suited executives watched us enter. Their stares lingered longer than necessary when they saw me. I wasn't dressed for this world. But Mr. Rourke didn't flinch. He motioned me forward as if I belonged. In the meeting, I translated every complex term, every hidden condition, every subtle tone from both sides. My voice echoed in that polished boardroom like I'd done it 1,000 times. And then came the twist. The banker leaned forward. "There's a clause we must clarify," he said. "If not signed by 3 p.m., the agreement dissolves permanently." I looked at the wall clock. 2:27 p.m. Rourke frowned. "We were never told that," I translated. The banker shrugged, unapologetic. Pressure filled the room like steam in a kettle. Documents had to be read, translated, understood, fast, and no mistakes. Rourke's voice grew firm. "Clara, can you help me finish this?" My hands trembled, but I nodded. "I will." Sweat gathered on my back. I read, explained, repeated. Every word felt like a brick being laid under a tight deadline. 2:59 p.m., Rourke signed. The banker smiled. Barely. It was done. He turned to me, eyes intense. "Clara, you just saved me again." But his words weren't what shook me. It was the way he said my name. Like I was more than a helper. Like I was needed. The next morning, a black car waited for me outside my apartment. I nearly didn't go down. What was I doing? I was just a hotel janitor. Not a personal assistant, not a translator, but something inside me whispered, "Go." Mr. Rourke greeted me with coffee in hand and eyes heavy from lack of sleep. "We have another meeting," he said, "higher stakes." The ride was quiet, tense. I watched him scroll through emails, frown at his phone, sigh deeply. Something had changed. At the meeting, I learned why an investor was pulling out. One clause triggered by an old debt Rourke's company had inherited. If they couldn't renegotiate, he'd lose not only the deal, but his reputation. He looked at me before speaking. "They won't respect me if they sense desperation, but if you speak, they'll listen differently." And so I did. I stood at that table and negotiated terms I barely understood the day before. I translated his intent with precision. I softened harsh edges. I strengthened weak arguments. I became his voice. When we stepped outside, the sun had shifted. Time was running out. They gave us 48 hours to secure a new investor. No guarantees. He leaned against the building wall, rubbing his eyes. "I've never needed anyone before," he said. "Not really." I stayed silent. He turned to me. "Why are you helping me, Clara? What do you want from this?" I took a breath. I just wanted someone to see that I could do more than clean floors. He looked at me, really looked, and said, "You already are." I didn't know it then, but that moment changed everything. The next evening, just as I finished organizing some of Mr. Rourke's documents, his phone rang. He answered quickly, then froze. "Speak slowly," he said, voice tight. Then he handed the phone to me. A woman's voice came through, agitated, urgent. I translated in real time. It was from the bank. The clause had been triggered too early. An automated system processed a withdrawal, freezing a portion of his assets. Without those funds, the investor pulling out would take others with him. His empire was crumbling. "No, no, no," he whispered. "That's impossible." But it wasn't. I watched as panic took over him for the second time. But this time, it wasn't quiet. He kicked a chair, shouted at no one. "I've worked 20 years for this." His chest heaved. He looked at me, not as a partner, not as someone who saved him twice, but as someone he needed to blame. This never would have happened if He stopped himself. I stood still, not flinching, not angry, just heartbroken. I didn't come into your life to ruin anything, I said. I came to help. But maybe that's not what you really wanted. He didn't answer. I left. I walked out into the cool night, away from the glass towers and leather seats, back to my old shoes, my quiet apartment, my silence. The next morning, I found a note taped to my door. It was written in his language. Forgive me. I forgot who truly saves who. Inside the envelope, a Bible verse, handwritten. For the stone which the builders rejected has become the cornerstone. I held the paper in shaking hands. He wasn't done, and neither was I. I didn't go to work the next day. I cleaned my apartment like I was scrubbing away every trace of him. I turned off my phone. I didn't want apologies. Not from someone who only saw my worth when convenient. But late in the afternoon, someone knocked on my door. It was Mrs. Langley, my neighbor from across the hall. Widowed, kind, always watching with quiet eyes. There's a man in a suit downstairs, she said. He asked for you by name. I peeked out the window. Mr. Rourke. He didn't look like the man I'd followed through boardrooms. His coat was wrinkled, his hair uncombed. He held a plastic bag instead of a briefcase. I brought you something, he said when I opened the door. Soup and a job offer. I raised an eyebrow. I'm serious, he said. I need someone like you, not just to translate, but to lead. I've been blind to what real strength looks like. I stayed silent. He continued. They say when the foundation cracks, it reveals the truth underneath. I saw mine. I didn't like it. I stepped aside, letting him in. We sat. We talked. We didn't speak about business for a long time. He asked about my father, about the language I hadn't spoken since childhood. He told me about his own mother, how she cleaned offices when he was little, how he hadn't thought of that in years. By the end of the night, the soup was cold, but something warm had taken its place. A kind of peace, a kind of understanding. He looked at me and said, You reminded me that the most valuable investments aren't in banks. They're in people. The next week, I didn't return to the hotel. Instead, I entered a different building, smaller, quieter, but full of potential. A modest office rented by Mr. Rourke while he rebuilt from the ruins of his failed deal. I was introduced as Director of International Communications. I laughed when I heard it. Is that really my title? He grinned. It's who you've always been? My desk was simple, my computer slow. But every day I showed up, learned more, studied late, asked questions I never thought I'd dare ask. I stopped cleaning floors and started building bridges. When he struggled to earn back investor trust, I helped craft messages that spoke to hearts, not just wallets. When banks hesitated to lend again, I sat across from them, not as a translator, but as a strategist. We worked side by side, day after day. The lines between janitor and millionaire blurred. One evening, after a long meeting, he turned to me. I know I've asked a lot, he said, but would you come with me next month, overseas, for the new project? I hesitated. I've never even been on a plane, I whispered. Then let's make it your first. I said yes, but not because I owed him. I said yes because I wasn't afraid anymore. Not of rich people, not of boardrooms, not even of falling. Because I'd already fallen once into the cracks of invisibility. And now, I was climbing out, not alone. With every step, I felt stronger. not because of him, but because I finally believed what I used to only hope, that I was made for more. The flight overseas was surreal. I sat by the window, watching clouds stretch beneath us like endless fields of cotton. Rourke dozed beside me, head tilted, completely vulnerable for once. I held the file folder in my lap, the project that would either save his name or bury it for good. We landed to a blur of meetings, media attention, and silent pressure. The new project was ambitious, a digital banking platform for underserved communities. Risky, unconventional, the investors were skeptical. You think the poor need banking apps? One asked, scoffing. Rourke didn't answer. He looked at me. So I spoke. Most of my life, I didn't have access to credit, to information, to dignity. It wasn't just about money, it was about being seen. And this platform gives people that. Silence. They took notes. Some frowned, others nodded, but it wasn't enough. Later that night, back at the hotel, Rourke stared out at the skyline, his voice barely above a whisper. I don't know if we'll make it. I walked over. Do you remember what you told me? He looked confused. You said real investments are in people. You believed that. He turned. Do you? I nodded. With everything in me. We sent one final proposal, more honest, more human. We included testimonies, photos, stories, not charts, not projections. And we waited. The silence was heavier than failure. 2 days. 3. On the 4th, a single email arrived. Subject, approved. The investors were in. I looked at him. He looked at me. Neither of us said a word. But we didn't need to, because we had already changed.